Hello and welcome to Leaders in Studio. My name is Uliana Zilbermans and I'm a Chief Revenue Officer at Avenue Code. And we travel around the world to interview amazing leaders in IT and find out about their inspiring stories. And today we're in Lisbon, Portugal. And I am here with Sergio Pereira, and you are the youngest CTO that I've ever interviewed in my life. So I'm very excited to introduce you to Sergio. Sergio, tell us more about you and 5 startups that you've been around, and how did you become a CTO at such a young age?
Well, thanks for having me. It's definitely a pleasure to be a part of this selected roster of leaders that you're interviewing. Definitely honored to be invited. I actually look younger than I am. I've been working in tech for 12 years, and now It's been a fun ride that I'm happy to tell you about.
Is there a secret? You put yourself in a refrigerator while you...
I don't know.
I want to know the secrets of this young man.
It's just the genes, I guess. So I actually started as a CTO very young. I would say much younger than usual, at 26-year-old.
Wow.
After having working in tech for 3 years. So before that, I was a software engineer and an engineering manager. Leading teams in a more, let's say, usual way, where I learned a lot to actually build, to actually help people on board and all of that. My road to actually becoming a CTO is actually fun, because I didn't actually intend to become a CTO. What I really wanted was to be an entrepreneur.
Sure.
I wanted to build products, to create a company, to create value to clients around the world. So as I did it with a friend, and that friend was the business guy and I was the techie guy. So startup rules say that he was the CEO and I was the CTO.
That's
so
awesome.
That's how it actually started.
Yeah.
How I had my first CTO title, which is not saying much. I was just the two of us. But then things evolved rapidly. So that first startup that I built, we got early investment and early clients. We had a product in the media and advertising space, so we landed clients among some of the biggest media companies in Europe. So I got to build quite a significant team from very early on, to move abroad and have teams spread across different countries. And well, fast forward from there, I've had a number of different experiences, always as the CTO, so assembling teams of engineers, managing them, building technology, and hearing how clients deal with it. It's been 8 years now, so definitely a fun ride.
Very nice, awesome. And where are you today? What company are you working for?
So I have recently joined Bulk MRO, which is a startup, well, later stage compared to the ones I worked previously, which is a very interesting challenge. It is in a trade finance space. So what we do is we enable basically international trade. So companies buying or selling any product in very high volumes, very big transaction tickets. We support that both from the logistical point of view and also the financial point of view.
Nice.
It is an age-old process. So although I've worked in fintech for 5 years now, I got to experience the more B2C side of it, where there's massive innovation. We have Revolut, all these neobanks, Klarna, all this buy now pay later trend. So driving at the core of fintech, these more B2B processes like international trade finance are clearly lagging behind. So they rely on age-old processes, lots of paperwork, lots of intermediation, lots of bureaucracy. So it is a big challenge that I've signed up for, to build the next wave of innovative products in the international trade finance space. And also to do that, I am and will be assembling an international team, a fully remote team of engineers around the world. So right now we have 5 different countries. We have just started 3 months ago, but we will be building a team pretty much spread across the world, because ultimately talent is anywhere. We just need to find.
Yeah, when I read about your profile, the biggest thing that came to me that you are the biggest remote work advocate, and you started before the pandemic. I know we all now changing and adapting to it, but you even started that movement before. So tell me more about how did you really believe and why did you believe in that? How the world became flat for you in a way of like anybody can be anywhere, and what are the future of the remote work looks like?
Yeah, so for me, remote work is something that I embraced in a very organic way. There was not exactly a before and after for me. It was just something that embedded into me in a very organic and gradual way. So since the very beginning of my career, like 12 years ago, I was in Portugal, working with clients in the US, managing teams in India and the Philippines. So you see, it's the world we're almost there in terms of time zones. It's just that it was not remote work. It was contracting relationships, dev shops here and there. And But indeed, I was already kind of a window in Zoom. Not Zoom because there was no Zoom at the time. It was a Microsoft tool. But people were kind of remote already. So as I started gaining the ownership of having my own companies, my own teams, it didn't make a lot of sense to me that those teams would need to be only in the same office in the same city. So although I kind of started that way because it was kind of the status quo and also I was young, I didn't necessarily know better. I started moving away from that and hiring teams in different countries and ultimately just hiring people anywhere. So since 2018, I've been pretty much hiring anywhere regardless. I have sometimes boundaries around time zones just because sometimes there are overlapping processes that need people to be awake and working at the same time.
Yeah.
But other than that, I am a big believer that talent is anywhere in the world and we just need to find it. Plus, remote work is I found from my experience, is the highest standard of productivity for most people, at least engineers, designers, people who do focused work that need to do deep work. I found out that these people mostly are most productive in an environment that they control. You know, some people are unique and weird in their own ways. Some people like to code to loud heavy metal music. Some people like to have their pets near to them. Some people like to cook in the middle of the workday. Some people just like to travel around the world and work while they do it, and they are super productive that way because that's what they enjoy. So remote work accommodates all of this weirdness of different people being different. So not everyone is stellar and productive in an office space under the same light, under the same noise. And, you know, it's just different people are different. And I think there's obviously then, you know, people not having to commute and all these logistical advantages and convenience advantages of remote work. But if I kind of descope a little bit, on a higher level, I really believe that remote work is the biggest societal shift of our generation. The fact that from the CTO perspective, the fact that I believe that I can find talent anywhere in the world, that means for the software engineer in India, it means he can work for an American company that I'm CTO of. It means that for the designer in Portugal, he can work for a social media company in San Francisco. For the data science in Brazil, he can work for a startup in Berlin. So for our parents' generation, they would need to immigrate, to go through a life-changing logistics, be away of family, friends, etc., to get to high-paying jobs, to fulfilling careers at top companies. For us, fortunately, we don't anymore. So I think this is going to be a massive impact for local communities in rural areas, developing countries.
For sure.
So they can have people there earning higher salaries, gaining better knowledge because they are working with top standards around the world without leaving home. So that can develop those communities with people retaining there and bringing money home. So I believe it's going to be massive.
Yeah, and I can't agree with you more, because if you think about it becomes a marketplace. It's a marketplace for talent.
It is.
I think that there is some challenges with the language, with the culture, with that personal touch when you like really
That's
want to come together and talk about solving a problem, and then you have all different cultural aspects and the team from all over the world trying to solve the problem remotely. There is an element of, like, how do you deal with that? So my next question to you is, how do you really break those barriers between the teams that were born and raised different cultures, completely, like they even take body signals differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any advice to people that actually
Absolutely.
have remote teams?
And I've actually started recently a project called Remote Work Academy, where I'm creating. A lot of people have messaged me with that, like, "Oh, great timing! I have been working remotely because, well, with the pandemic, many people around the world went home because they had to."
Yeah.
But I never read anywhere. I just figure things out, and we are struggling in a certain way. So, the Remote Work Academy, I'm producing, I assembled a team. We are creating quite significant content, and we will be publishing some courses on best practices, tools, hiring, which is a huge struggle for
sure.
Many CTOs these days in a remote world. To your question, I believe absolutely remote teams tend to be on average more diverse than office teams, just because office teams have people from one city. There are cities that are very diverse, others that are not as diverse.
Yeah.
But in remote teams, there are international. Odds are there's people from all sorts of countries, and that will bring a lot of diversity. So having a diverse and inclusive culture, I think, is a thing that all companies must have, regardless of office, remote, whatever country. Yeah. Embracing ethnic minorities, women, people who are different from the norm. In San Francisco, a startup scene, they used to have this term bro grammar, like bro culture, where anyone, even men who wouldn't fit that specific stereotype, would struggle to fit in. So I think now it's not just for remote companies. Any company needs to strip away such stereotypes and such ways of doing things that don't include anyone who doesn't fit in. And that would be women, ethnic minorities, people from just different cultures, or people who are just different from the majority. So I think in remote teams that is very important, to be really strict around diversity statements, zero tolerance policies, people knowing that, commenting things like ethnicity, religion, even political stuff, that is something that should not be touched, because different people are different, and we should always respect and be inclusive towards that. Towards the more social bonding aspect, I would say that different people have very different experiences in that regard. I think it's more or less widely accepted that remote work creates the challenge towards socialization, just because people are mostly home, sometimes alone. So that is a clear one. I've been in scenarios in my team where people became best friends without ever having met in person.
Yeah.
Which is something that, if you told me my 5 year ago self, I wouldn't necessarily believe that, because even doing remote teams before the pandemic, I mean, people would meet once in a while. And that is fun, because people not being able to actually travel and meet for an extended period of time, they made friendships and connections by working together every day, by trusting each other, by just collaborating and coaching each other. So that was fun. There are certain dynamics that can be fostered in a remote team to bond socially the team members. And also, I think beyond that, face-to-face connection is always important, now that fortunately people are again able to travel and to meet. I think for remote teams, the best practice is also to make retreats once in a while, at least like once a year, once, sometimes a quarter, to just get all the people together, and more for social purposes, not for work purposes, but just to bond together, to mingle, and to just enjoy spending time together. So that produces more I would say happier remote teams for sure.
No, for sure. And you know what I'm hearing also is what pandemic did to all of us is really we used to have this friendships and, you know, families and seeing each other for barbecues, but then it's all disappeared, and then the new world became obviously a new thing for us. And I realized, like, I had teams in Brazil and in Europe and in Canada, and they all come together. We become friends. We've never seen each other, and I don't know where they are, honestly. When I am on the phone with them, I see them. They're there next to me, and that's how I feel. And the world became so flat, so connected in a way, and I haven't seen my friends for months here locally where I'm in San Francisco. And the people that I work with, they become so truly connected, you know, through this experience.
In my last team, this is a funny anecdote. In my last team, I had this girl from originally from Venezuela, so Latin American, super extrovert, super people-driven, and she joined just before the pandemic started. And she never actually met anyone else in the team, because she joined exactly the week before everyone locked down. And so I ramped up one-on-ones and stuff like that during the pandemic, because a lot of people were struggling in many ways. And I asked her, like, being such an extrovert, how are you dealing with being, you know, ramping up relationships in a team without ever meeting anyone in person? And she was like, look, I am from a country where most people immigrate. Like, most of my childhood friends immigrated to different countries. So I'm actually used I had never thought about it, but in my personal life, I'm very used to maintain friendship relationships remotely with family, with friends. I had never thought about it myself either. So in fact, the world went remote. We use social media, we use WhatsApp, we immigrate, we travel to different places. So we are actually used to do that. Why not leverage all that collaborative knowledge to work as well?
Awesome. No, it is so true. And in your opinion, since you work with all different countries now, you have this access, which country or people, and I know that you look for quality and skill set, but which is the most up-and-coming country that you feel like they're completely embrace remote work? They're so excited to be part of this global network that they didn't have access before. Like, which country, what countries are maybe like top 3 in your mind that are the best in that area?
Yeah, well, it's tough to say best or worse. I think there are countries with incredible potential, not just countries, I'd say regions, because sometimes adjacent countries work as if they were just the same. I think for people, so countries that have high population, mostly population within working age, let's say 25, 45 years old. Countries that have good internet connection, because without an internet connection, no one can work remotely or do anything over the internet. And countries where these segment of the population have access to good education. Doesn't need to be stellar, but they need to have reasonable universities, access to knowledge. I find that some of these countries are kind of, I would say, obvious to us. So if I say India, Pakistan, stuff like that, those were already winning in the outsourcing game.
Yeah.
So they are obviously translating that to remote work more broadly. Latin America, like Brazil being such a huge population, Argentina as well, Mexico, are also subject to that. Their challenge there is typically language. English speaking to a good professional level is still not a huge fraction of the population, although it's increasing fast. I would say now for a bit of the unexpected, very promising, I would say, probably the most promising set of countries for the next couple decades is in my opinion, is Africa. Mostly Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda. So huge populations, like millions of people within this age group. And those countries were, historically kind of forgotten for all this sake. They were just developing countries. They were not up to standards with technology, not even have good enough internet connections. Since about 5-6 years ago, there was huge investment. There was huge VC backing for companies like Andela and local boot camps and technology schools and even universities. The talent pool now is incredible. The only caveat now is that the most senior people are just like around 5 years of experience, which is still kind of short for many companies to hire as seniors. In 5 years, they will be up to speed. And it's just like thousands of people. I'm a deep believer that Africa can be the next Brazil and the next India when it comes to a location for talent.
That's great. That's insightful. I think also for the age of the professionals and the number of years are shrinking. I feel like I'm in the consulting business, and now, before it was 10, 15 years, now we need, 3 to 5. It's really become like the person who is really smart and the street smart, and they are absorbing. They're like such smart individuals. They're so, they have 3 to 4 projects behind their shoulders, and they already feel like they can conquer the world in terms of the technology, the diversity. And, we internally change in our, our seniority levels. Before it was in dozens, now it's in years, because it's...
That's true. And I think, there's an overhauling trend, which is the skills gap, meaning the number of job openings versus the number of people in the world who actually have the skills to fill those openings. This gap is widening. There's more and more companies needing tech skills, and the number of people is increasing, but at a slower pace. So then what happens is that companies cope with that and find strategies that are different. Some just increase budgets to get the best engineers. Others lower the requirements, which is exactly what you're describing. Sometimes they change to technologies that have a higher level of abstraction, so they don't need people as qualified or as experienced. And such 3-year experience, a person with willpower can take the challenge. Some companies are even going beyond that. There's now all these no-code tool kind of revolution where for certain use cases where companies would hire engineers, now they are just not hiring engineers. They are hiring people who can figure out certain low-code tools to get some MVP or some proof of concept up to speed. So it's great because there's more tools for more people to just make decisions and use whatever fits them.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I personally believe in pair programming. When you have somebody leading that loves to be a coach to someone, and they're senior, and then there is a young professional that love to be coached and trained. So that pair programming, that when you bring them to a project, they all strive to win.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the best possible mix. I think I tweeted this or talked in an event at some point that a team composed only of senior people, they will leave. They will get bored because junior people want to learn, senior people want to teach. This typically is the mix. So you need to hire seniors, but then you need to hire juniors because it's a perfect fit. Ones will teach, the others will learn, and you have a team, because then the juniors of today will be the seniors of tomorrow, and then they will hire juniors and teach them, and that's how it works.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it. I want to talk about technology, and I know technology is in the core of your business, but if you think about what would really be revolutionizing technology and changing people's lives, so in your opinion, like looking at the world, looking at all the technologies out there, like what would that be in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I'm very passionate about blockchain and decentralization. I do believe that blockchain can be that technology that can represent a level of increment to value creation, to creating new use cases, enabling new ways of creating value to one another. That could be in relative the same size of what the internet was 20 years ago. I believe we are just scratching the surface with cryptocurrency, now NFTs, all the craze around this. I think it's great that it has gained traction, but I think it's just specific use cases. Wide adoption will take longer. I believe the world is shifting and evolving in a direction where individuals are getting massively empowered. So for certain use cases that you would use institutions as middlemen in the past, now you do peer-to-peer. So take for instance, I came here in someone else's car. If I travel, I stay in someone else's home. So back in the day, I would need to go to a big institution that is a trusted brand. You know, now there's the gig economy, connecting the dots. I believe blockchain and cryptocurrency has the potential to do that in a way that has financial value transaction embedded in the actual protocol. So I believe it can definitely represent the next step. It's early days. I've worked at the space for the past 5 years, so it's been a lot of change. So 4 or 5 years ago, it would be just nerds like me figuring out smart contracts and stuff, and most of them didn't necessarily have a clue of value creations. How I will actually create revenue out of this geeky thing I'm creating. Fast forward to today, now you have legit startups, legit use cases, and companies that have quite wide adoption already. So I believe it will continue this steady pace. Sometimes there will be use cases that will spike like NFTs are doing right now. But there will be all this craze about prices. When it goes up, everyone talks about it. When it goes down, it goes calm a little bit. But besides all the noise, there's Signal. And Signal is people who are quietly working and building stuff. And those companies will start being the Amazons, the Googles of 20 years ago. They are starting today. They are just behind the scenes, under our radar. But they will come up over the surface eventually.
Yeah, what I'm hearing, Sergio, is that you would like to see breaking barriers and stereotypes in banking and crypto and technology and the workforce. So for you, technology enablement right now is in crypto and in the blockchain, because it will completely open the world to the whole new level. Like we can use one technology for one thing, but if we actually have that mechanism that is completely like groundbreaking and adopted in all different areas, I think that's where we can fly and don't see the barriers.
Absolutely. There will be massive pushback though, as it is happening. Like banks won't like it, regulators won't like it, but that's how innovation works. A lot of people try to push back to the actual internet. Now it's crazy, like who would push back to the internet? The internet is around us, it's everywhere. But there was a time the internet was starting and established businesses wanted to push back. So now it's crypto and blockchain. In the future will be something else. That's just how innovation works.
It's like electric cars, you have oil and gas industries that they're really controlling it, but then there is small movement and then it becomes a power and there's nothing people can do and they just adapt.
And then what happens, back to electric cars as an example, is that Tesla appears, everyone pushes back,
we all have
Tesla survives, and everyone joins the bandwagon because Tesla is now leading the big movement and they cannot just be out.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's how it will work. I guess with crypto will be the same kind of pattern. There will be early adopters that will be pushed back on and will survive and then thrive.
For sure.
And the existing players will ultimately stop pushing back, join the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Some of them will do it too late and will just get crushed in the market.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you, absolutely. And last question is about your Twitter activity. You are very active in Twitter. I wanted to know why we want to share the knowledge and how we can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's fun because I've always been this introvert nerd, so I always like to build and to be behind the scenes. I'm not originally very people person. And
that helps, right? You don't see them, you just share.
No, but a few years ago, when I was one of the companies I had, I went out and promote the services and myself as a consultant leading the value proposition. I was selling consultancy and fractional CTO on the blockchain space. So I figured I will create a lot of content and I will speak at events. So I became a public speaker against all odds.
Oh, that's difficult.
And I loved it. I loved speaking in front of thousands of people, telling them how to become a blockchain developer or for companies, how to create value with decentralization because they had no idea what that was. I love that. And the pandemic actually stopped that trajectory because obviously the events industry crumbled down.
Yeah.
And over the last 2 years, I felt the need to share knowledge because share knowledge is also getting pushback, getting questions, getting different points of view, getting support. So all that combined is learning for me. So I think it's a very self-sustainable ecosystem. So in the beginning of this year, I started getting active on Twitter. And my motto is to actually share my knowledge with tweet activity, engagement on other people's accounts, and just make knowledge available. And obviously the knowledge that relates to remote work will be in the Remote Work Academy and will be centralized there. For everything else is just not necessarily structured. I just tweet and people can follow me. Nice. So you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Sergio Rocks. So my first name and Rocks. It's very easy. No underscores, no dashes, no anything.
That's awesome.
So tag along, drop questions, drop DMs. You know, I'm all up for answering them and help everyone learning with me.
Thank you, Sergio. And who do you follow? Who Sergio Rocks follows on Twitter? Like, what are your top 3 followers that you admire and love to hear from?
That's a challenging one. So one person that I love to follow is Naval Ravikant. He's the founder of Angelist. He's a prominent Twitter personality. I love that he intersects philosophy with entrepreneurship in a very unique way. I find that he manages to put to very simple sentences things that I believe myself but never actually thought of them that way.
How to put that together, that's awesome.
So I love it. I love the guys from Y Combinator, Paul Graham as the most prominent. I have read Paul Graham's essays since the I think it was the foundational content that I consumed in my first startup to kind of what is this all about being a founder. And awesome. I find it lovely that he's still active every day. I comment, he comments back, and there's a conversation there. I think that's the power of Twitter, actually.
Yeah.
Same goes for Sam Altman and a few others. Actually, the company I joined is invested by Y Combinator, so it's interesting how things come together in unique ways. And then I just follow people that from engineering backgrounds that I find really interesting, that share like specific things. Like there's this guy who launched a course on how to do code reviews. It's a very specific part of any engineers or engineering managers or CTO's day that I didn't know anyone would ever launch a course specifically on that. Nice. So same goes for things like one-on-ones, how to do one-on-ones. You know, for some people, one-on-ones is just jumping on someone's, just on a Zoom call with someone. So I find that I'm learning a lot about engineering, which is something that is at the core of what I do. Yeah. I'm learning new things from just a diversity of people from diversity of backgrounds and experiences,
That's awesome.
which is amazing.
Awesome, awesome. I would like to follow you and check what you're feeding. And please join Sergio Rocks. And thank you for joining our Portugal edition of Leaders in Studio. And it was awesome talking to you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.